Live chat. Welcome everyone to today's live stream, episode 3 of our Baldur's Gate 3 Bard gameplay series. I'm Commander Jorval and I want to thank you for coming along on our journey today. So first, on an admin note, as I did last week, it's just amazing to me how many people have expressed their support for the channel over the past week and the week before that. It's like I say, it's a bit surreal for me, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of you. The people who have given me their subscription and their comments the past couple of weeks, and also everyone here who is kind enough to show up to the live stream from all across the world. It's simply amazing to me. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you very much. I certainly appreciate it. On another admin note, my house is still under construction, so the incredibly janky setup that I have to do a live stream today, just like last week, is still in effect. I hope we don't have any issues today, but we'll play it by ear and see how it goes. Like I say, cable strung entirely across the house right now, so I hope everything sticks together as we go. On a last admin note, just on the state of the game, as everyone's aware, the game is currently going to be released here in a little bit under 2 weeks. And the full version of the game is going to be released on PC. Unfortunately, those of you on PS5 are going to have to wait a little bit longer until the original release date at the first week of September. But the full release is fast approaching, and I've gotten a lot of comments about the Bard series of live streams, and I talked about this briefly, and just want to say that yes, I am going to continue this stream. So what's going to happen is I will change the intro a little bit, just to make it very clear that we're going to continue the Bard live stream, but just let everybody know that it is still in early access. So I'm going to continue this while at the same time doing a new live stream in the full version of the game at this time, once the full version releases. So get ready, you will have 2 live streams from me, one on Saturday at this time, which will be the Bard playthrough continuing through early access, and then a full version live stream with a completely new character, class, and race that I'm going to be starting for the full version, and it will be on Sundays at this time. So I'll put up a post about it in the community tab, so feel free to visit that and stay up to date on what's happening. So I think that gets us through the admin notes for today. Oh, one more thing that I did mention in the chat is that due to a comment, I did adjust the audio levels a little bit. I turned up the game audio a little bit, so please let me know if there are any issues with the audio as we go, or if the game sounds are interfering with my speech as we go, and we'll make some adjustments as we go along. But as always, feel free to drop me any comments or questions that you have, and I'll do my best to answer them while we go. So, on a recap, at the end of last live stream, we had explored most of the Shattered Coast, and we have now arrived in through a back way into the Dank Crypt. And at that point, I needed to head back to camp for a long rest, and as part of that, there are a bunch of discussions that are going to have to be had here. This is one of the major parts of the Baldur's Gate series, and I think we're going to jump into that real quick so that we can just get kind of a first-hand view of it, and I'll explain as we go. So what class will I be playing from Pete? I'm going to be playing a Dragonborn Paladin for my first playthrough on the full version. So again, a class and a race that I didn't get to experiment with during live access or during early access, so I'm really looking forward to it. So, and again, thank you all for the compliments on the videos. I certainly hope that they are helping to explain some of the game here. I know it can be a little bit intimidating, especially if you don't have any D&D experience. So anything I can do to help out, I certainly will. So jumping in here, as I had mentioned, character interactions between you and the origin characters, who are the main characters that you're able to choose for your party, is a very important part of the Baldur's Gate series, not just in the third version here, but in the first two as well. If you look, our companions will all have individual quest lines that they will go through, which will open up various different dialogue options with them, as well as options for romance and things like that as you go. So being able to interact with them and learn their backstories, as well as learning more about their personal quests and what motivates them, is a large part of progressing through any Baldur's Gate 3 game. So the main way that you do that is through interacting with them when you're in a long rest. All of your characters will be at your camp, not just the ones in your party. Currently, that's all that we have, except for Astarion. Astarion's not in our party right now for this section of the playthrough. But all of your characters that the origin characters you've unlocked are going to be here, as well as other characters that you have met and have decided to join you. They will show up in your camp, and at that time you can walk around and have interactions with them. So we're going to start that off, and those interactions, before I start, will help open up more interactions with them and open up those companion quests. So every time you take a long rest, you want to go talk to all of your characters that are in camp and make sure that there aren't any new dialogue options that are available from them. So we're going to start this off by talking to Astarion.
Yes? Oh, what's to tell? I'm a magistrate back in the city. It's all rather tedious. And clearly the tadpole. If we can't understand it, we'll never control it.
Okay, and then the only two options you have are to recruit him back into your party or leave. So from Astarion, we learned basically the same things that we knew previously. He's very interested in controlling the tadpole. He's not interested in having it removed. He wants to learn how to use the power that it gives him to, further himself. We also learned a little bit that he's obviously from Baldur's Gate, the city itself, and that is going to play into things more in the full version once you get to the city itself. So now let's go talk to Lae'zel, and we'll do it here again.
Abominations grow inside us. Our bones should ache. Our mouths should bleed. Yet we thrive. It is madness. Keep your rest short. Time is not our ally.
Okay, so nothing new from Lae'zel. We'll go talk to her again. That was obviously a put-together cutscene with no dialogue at the end. So if you talk to her again, you can see that there are some more character interaction options here. So
I expect I am your first. Of course you haven't. They would have cut you from navel to neck. You are no less alien to me than I am to you. I know of your kind, but I do not often encounter them. That large, fleshy nose of yours looks like a mistake. Better is an opinion, but mine is certainly more economical, disciplined, dignified. I understand much beyond your comprehension. More to the point, I know the cure for our condition. It is imperative we locate a creche. You do well to observe more and question less. Yes, in great detail. It starts with a fever and memory loss. Then you start to hallucinate. Your hair falls out, and you bleed from every orifice. Your bones will change form. Your jaw will split to allow room for 4 great tentacles. All skin will turn to gore, and be shed to reveal new flesh underneath. Then you have ceased to exist, and a mind flayer is born. Words forged in steel. May your actions express the same metal. We must find my kind and be rid of the parasite. It's as simple as that. The first symptoms should have long since started, though. That is what puzzles me. Yes, if you give it no further thought. But anomalies lead to surprises. Bad surprises. Besides, what hasn't happened may yet come to pass. We find this Zorru in the Red Hunter's camp. He will point us to a creche. There we may be purified.
Okay, and that finishes everything up from Lae'zel there. So again, thank you for the comments. I certainly appreciate it. And again, once again, welcome everyone from everywhere that you are. It's amazing to see you here, so I appreciate it. So let's talk to Shadowheart.
Almost pleasant traveling with company. If you ignore all the less pleasant aspects. We haven't gone all that far yet. What are you referring to exactly? Must I? Thinking about it won't help. We know what to do, so let's do it. Find a way to rid ourselves of these things. We've no solid leads right now, though. We'd best get hunting. If you discover anything that might help us, I'm all ears. I must admit, you've been a surprise, and not an unpleasant one. Kindred spirits are few and far between for me. Besides, you saved my life aboard the Nautiloid. How can I do anything but sing your praises? I suppose we'd go our separate ways. Not a slight on your company, of course. Perhaps. Perhaps not. If we do survive, we'll have separate lives to return to. I need to get to Baldur's Gate. There's someone waiting for me there. Someone I have to reach. As soon as possible. Thank you. And you're right. It's a delicate matter. Not something for light conversation. Find a healer. And the sooner the better. I have other matters to attend to beyond this affliction. There's no story. None that you're entitled to hear, anyway. Just forget you ever saw it. Fine. What's on your mind? Must we? No harm in a little mystery, don't you think? Thank you. I'm sure we'll get along perfectly well.
Okay, so this option here about the box, as we've learned already, Shadowheart is very private individual, so she doesn't like to be pressed about her mission or how she got to be where she was or what she's carrying. You certainly can ask about it, and you're going to have several opportunities to do more asking about it later. You're going to learn about the artifact in time as you go through the playthrough, though. So I'm going to kind of leave it for now, and we'll move on. Drac, yes, you can't do multi-classing now. You're going to have to wait for the full release. So...
Be with you in a moment. Not a trick, my friend. Magic. Be that as it may. Ceramorphosis. What does it make you think of? Spot on. Day 1, fever and memory loss. Day 2, hallucinations and graying skin. Day 3, hair loss and blood leaking from all orifices. Need to go on? Day 4, excruciating pain as the skeleton and organs reform and reposition. Day 5, the host personality has disappeared. Fingers and toes and limbs elongate. I take it you get the picture? Day 6, the flesh around the mouth splits to make way for tentacles. Day 7, a mind flayer is born. This is the annotated version, of course. Spot on again. Our orifices remain blissfully unblooded, our heads remain clear, and our blood temperature normal. Any expert will agree this is abnormal. That, alas, is where my knowledge fails me. A rogue might call it luck, a priest might call it fate. As for myself, I'm a pragmatic. I see the silence before the storm. Something to sleep on. We should get some rest.
Okay, so obviously another pre-done cutscene, so we can talk to Gale again and see if he has any other comments or any other conversation options.
What's on your mind? Let's see. I hail from Waterdeep, City of Splendors. I am a wizard of considerable acclaim and scholar of exceptional accomplishment. I have a cat, a library, and a weakness for a good glass of wine. And if the mood takes me, I'm known to try my hand at poetry. There. Didn't that paint enough of a picture?
Okay, so here's our first wisdom check, and you'll get these checks in these conversations with your origin characters quite a bit. You have to think about what it's asking you to do, though, and how that character is going to react to it. So the line here specifically says, try peering into his mind. If he won't open up, you'll sneak in. Well, that's kind of an invasion of privacy, right? So you might get some disapproval from Gale if you get caught, or even if you don't get caught, he might, you know, sense that he's giving up more information that he wants to. So you have to think about trying these things when you're presented with them, and think about how the character is going to react and whether or not you want to gain approval or disapproval from them. In this case, I'm gonna let it lie. I'm not going to do this wisdom check, but again, in your own playthroughs, you're certainly more than willing to do so. Okay, so that's it for Gale, so we will leave. So there aren't any other conversations to be had in here right now. So now we need to find our traveler's chest so that we can grab our camp supplies out.
Here we go. Farther can I go?
And finish our long rest, and it doesn't look like it's in here. I can never remember where to find the traveler's chest in this specific campsite. I might have overlooked it. Nope, there it is right there. Okay, so 8, 13, 14. Actually, I think what we're going to do is just take a supply pack here. And we will go back to our inventory and we will put all of these camp supplies back. Because of this unintended long rest here, due to the complete and utter failure of all of the bardic inspirations trying to find the Harper's stash, we're a little bit short on camp supplies, so we're just going to use the supply pack to finish this off. Okay. Alright, so we are now back in the Dank Crypt here, where we left off. Normally we would have Astarion with us, however, and we're not going to be bringing Shadowheart through the most of the gameplay here. But in this case, Shadowheart is going to help us showcase something about her abilities when we get in here. So let's make our way in here. And we'll start exploring a little bit. As we noticed last time, we do have these entombed scribes that are on the ground. We also have an entombed warrior over here, and there are more of them. So we're going to just begin our explorations here. And you see that we do have a bunch of candles and some candelabra around. We're going to light up as many of these as we can.
Scribes, but no sign of a struggle.
I wonder what was so subversive about their words that they commanded protection.
And we do have a gilded chest here that we can search. So we have some cups that aren't really worth a whole lot. So we'll leave those and we will move to Gale. And this gives you the first explanation about how you can see or not see in the dark. So your characters who have dark vision, so right now Shadowheart and myself, who are both half-elves, have dark vision. We can see in the dark up to 12 meters. And you can see that as I move around. You can see how the area in front of me is lit up, but when I go to Gale, everything goes back to being dark. That darkness means that if he gets into a fight and a character or an enemy he's trying to attack is in darkness, he's going to have disadvantage on that attack roll. And we've already shown how bad disadvantage can be for you and how bad it can be for the enemies if it's inflicted on them. So we want to try and illuminate as much of these areas as we can to light them up so that as much of the area as possibly can see is lit up. And that way, if we do get into a fight, then we have less areas in this place that are obscured, where something can be hidden from us and we're not able to attack it very effectively. So I'm just going to use his cantrip, which makes Gale's cantrip here, Firebolt, especially useful in that he can just cast it over and over and over again. So I'm going to have him kind of light up some of the areas here and also do some searching while we're in here. But again, Gale, as I've mentioned previously, is not going to be a permanent part of our party once we unlock all of the origin characters. But for now, he's very, very useful. Okay, so we'll move back around here. And you can start to see how things are dark versus light, and how much of a difference it makes. So you can search the entombed scribes, and they're going to have some weapons that are on them. Moving around back into this area, you can really see how dark things get,
Shouldn't have wished to
and
live
how
in
moving
interesting
to
times.
one of your characters with dark vision can light up those areas. So it's something very, very important to think about, is how much of the area is in light versus dark when you are thinking about a combat situation. And because I'm lighting all of this up, that probably will give you a hint that we are going to be getting into some combat, and that is certainly the case. So that's why we're taking a little bit extra care here, just to illuminate things as an example of how to go about, while you're exploring, things to think about while you're exploring those areas. We're going to be approaching the combat in a slightly different way that helps maximize our ability to contain the combat and funnel it in a way that help protect us. So for us, and this brazier's being a little bit strange. Okay, that one might be bugged and doesn't want to light up for us. So just lighting up some candles here. And we're going to come around. This brazier here is able to be lit. Another candelabra here. And we have another gilded chest. And again, we're going to move up next to it. If you move up next to it and you do not get a perception check, then that means that it's not trapped and you're free to open it. If you do get a perception check, then that means there might be a trap on it. You probably need to get somebody who can disarm that trap first. Oh, thanks for the comment, Colin. I certainly appreciate it. Yes, feel free to join as much as you possibly can. I appreciate any of the time that any of the viewers are able to spend on the live streams and my videos. I'm certainly very appreciative to every one of you for that, so thank you again. And now we're going to make our way down here into this lower area.
Who's this supposed to be? Statue looks ancient.
And you can see everyone got a religion check and everyone failed it. Or else you would learn about this statue here. This statue is a statue of Jergal. And there's a religion that goes behind or with that, I should say. And you just, at this point, you just learn about Jergal here, the god of death. But you're not able to learn anything more than that at this point, anyway. So we're going to move up here into this area and we can do some more searching. And holding Alt as we go, you can see there's a plaque down here.
The inscription is in a language unknown to you.
And there's nothing that you can do right now with that in early access, but I'll be very anxious to see what happens in the full version. So, coming up here, those eagle-eyed among you, and we commented on it right when we came into the Dank Crypt for the first time, there's a lit-up portion here. There's a hidden button. So I'm going to toggle the group here. Going to take Shadowheart, who has the guidance cantrip, and I'm going to have her cast guidance on Jorvalen here, and have her move up to this location. Okay, and she was able to perceive that button. So this is one of the more important perception checks that you're going to have in the early portions of the game. So you definitely want to make sure you pass this check and find that button. So leave your characters down here, break the group, and go up one at a time. If somebody doesn't pass it, then cast guidance on the next person, have them go up and try and perceive it until you get somebody that is able to perceive it, because this button is very, very important. So now we're going to continue on a little searching here. And there's nothing in any of the vases. And now we're going to click this button. And to do that, we're going to first do an autosave. Thank you for your time here on the stream, Sempi. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much. And now we're going to, again, toggle the group, or we're going to hide everybody first, and then we're going to toggle the group, and then we're going to take Lae'zel, and we're going to kind of move her out here, and we're going to unhide her so that she's visible to everybody. And then we're going to use her to trigger this button. You can see that she did not roll very well on initiative, but she is still the only one in combat right now. Most of the scribes are dashing to get within range of us, and now you can see that that button also opened up this door. Okay, so what we're going to do is one at a time. You can see where the detection cones only reach up to here, so we're going to move our characters into this room.
Step by step. A lot of effort to hide one sarcophagus.
And again, they can move however far they want because they are not in combat. But one at a time, we're going to move them here into this room. And actually, I'm going to save my bard's movement for now. And I'm going to kind of get them lined up a little bit here.
Why am I doing this?
So I'm going to leave space
How long will this take?
for everybody here. And for another spot here.
Of course, you never
And now for my bard.
have to keep going.
Going to move her in here. Now for Lae'zel. Yes. Now for Lae'zel, you can see that she took some damage from that spell. She took acid damage from the acid splash spell. So you learn that the entombed scribes are spellcasters. The entombed warrior here is obviously a melee type character. So if you stand out here, you're going to be subjected to a lot of spells from all of these four scribes. So I'm going to move myself back into this room so that they all have to make their way down here toward me. And I can help, and that's going to help me manage this encounter a little bit. So I'm going to just get some ranged attacks here in on these scribes as I go. Okay, cause 6 damage there. And now I'm going to move Lae'zel into this room. And I'm going to take my bard and move her farther into this room as well. Okay, and now I'm going to end Lae'zel's turn.
Will ascend.
As they dash to get within range, that means they cannot take another action after they dash. So dashing is a good thing, in that when they do a dash to get close, they cannot attack us afterwards. Okay, and now Lae'zel is here, and my bard is having stealth checks because she was in the detection cone here. Okay, so you saw her succeed on several hiding checks while they were moving around. As long as you stay in a detection cone, you have a chance to stay in hiding, and you will get a check every turn to maintain that hide. So you can see that there's a skill check that I rolled a 16. I'm proficient in that skill. So, or my basic +2 proficiency skill check from it, and I have a +2 dexterity modifier, so I get a roll of 20, and that passed. This roll of 9, it passed as well. So being able to stay in hiding with at least the Entombed Scribe seems to be something fairly easy to do. Okay, but now you can see they're starting to get a little grouped up here, right? So what I'm going to do is, with Lae'zel's turn, I'm going to move up and do a main hand attack on this scribe. Okay, that removes him from the fight. And now I'm going to move back out of the way, and I'm going to go to Shadowheart. I'm going to look at where the detection cone is. So I can move her up quite a ways to there and still not be detected. Okay. So at this point, I can now start moving my characters either out here into more combat, or I can wait for the enemies to come farther towards me here, and I can have them all approach through this door. Didn't mean to click on him there. Through this door, and I can engage them one at a time. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. I think she's got 15 hit points left, so I think she's still good. So I'm going to end her turn, and we'll get the scribes moving up. So the Entombed Warrior's moving up. That scribe dashed. This scribe dashed. And he's moving the wrong way around. And that scribe is choosing not to do anything. And now you can see the continuous hide checks that you're going to get as long as you remain inside that detection cone. Okay. So here I'm going to continue this off, and I'm going to go after the Entombed Warrior here with Lae'zel. And yes, I'm actually going to pommel strike first. And then I'm going to do a main hand attack. Yes, and you certainly can do that here, and that's something that we're going to be exploring more as we go. Once you create a checkpoint, or a choke point, as Jerry mentioned, you would put down something to keep them from entering that choke point or taking damage when they move through it. And right now, there are very few options for me to do something like that. However, I do have some options for how to control this. However, in this particular instance, with the doorway being here, I don't really need very much to do stuff like that, because there's only 4 enemies, and they're approaching me almost one at a time here. So there's not a whole lot of need for me to do it, but it is certainly something that that is a very valid tactic, and is something that you want to employ as you go. So what I'm going to try and do here with Gale is move Gale back out here into this area and see if I can get him into combat by casting Magic Missile on the Entombed Scribe. Because right now, path is interrupted from where he's standing. I could launch an attack on the Entombed Warrior, but I don't really have to. So I'm going to try and move out here and eliminate one of the spellcasters from this fight. Okay. So I killed that one. And now Gale is in combat, so he rolled his initiative. That is true. And in DOS, everything ends up becoming that one way or another. So, very, very true. Here, surfaces are very important as well. Your opportunities to use them are very situational, but that's what makes D&D great, in that they can be very, very powerful depending upon how you want to use them. So now I'm going to approach our next set here with Shadowheart. And what we're going to do here, I think, is try and turn Undead. Okay, so you can see her range. This scribe out here is just within range. It's only a 35% chance for it to work, but we'll see if it works. Okay, so this Entombed Warrior failed his saving throw, so for the next 3 turns, he's turned. The Entombed Scribe over here made their saving throw. So what's going to happen when I end Lae'zel's turn is this Entombed Warrior is going to have one of a couple of different reactions. So to that, they must move away from Shadowheart. They are turned, they have to move away. They can't take any actions, bonus actions, or reactions other than dash or to try and get away from me. So because they are within melee range of Lae'zel, as soon as it tries to move away, Lae'zel's going to get an attack of opportunity on the Entombed Warrior. So we'll see all that play out here as we go. Okay, so what happened was Lae'zel got her attack of opportunity. The attack landed, and that removed the turned effect after that. So you can see how that all played out over here. So it worked in that it got us free damage there, basically. And then it came out of its turned status. And now we can go with some other cantrips here with her to try and get some more damage dealt as we go. So we've got 2 more Entombed Scribes. This one up here is not the next one to move, but the one after that. And then this one's way over here on the other side. And there's no other way into this room from back here. So you can kind of see how this is now managing the damage that we take by limiting how many and who can approach us at the same time. So this scribe's going to dash. And so is this one. So that means this scribe is going to get in range, but it's not going to be able to attack once it gets inside the room because it dashed. And that's important, again, to help manage the encounter so that you minimize the amount of damage you take while maximizing how much you can dish out. So a way to kind of get a little bit more into the weeds on it is you can examine them and you can see what their movement speed is. So they have a movement speed of 9 meters. I know, movement speed versus movement distance. I know, it's a D&D thing. But you can see if once you can drag the movement line out, you can see approximately how far 9 meters is. So you can see how far away from a melee character you need to move to stay out of melee range. Or how far you can move to get around a corner to stay out of a spellcaster's range and things like that. So it's very important to keep an eye on how much movement speed an enemy has to help manage where they can and cannot move around the battlefield. So now my bard is still not in combat here. This Entombed Warrior only has 2 hit points left. So with our standard main hand attack, it's a 50-50 chance to land. So I could use... You can't use inspirations on yourself here. I think we're just going to go for the 50-50 shot here. Okay, and it missed and it put me into combat, but wanted to be in combat anyway. So now we get to Gale. And Gale, again, has Magic Missile. Magic Missile, if you look at the spell, you can see that it does 1d4 plus 1 force damage to its target. So the minimum that it can do is 2 points of damage per missile. The Entombed Warrior has only 2 hit points. Since Magic Missile is guaranteed to hit, you only have to put 1 projectile on this on the warrior. That's guaranteed to kill it. The other 2 you can split and move them over to this scribe to cause damage here as well. And that is what's one of the great things about Magic Missile, in addition to the fact that it never misses. You can split the projectiles between multiple enemies to cause multiple deaths, or cause a death and damage to something else at the same time. Okay, so we killed the warrior and we caused 8 points of damage to the scribe. So now... yeah, Bathory, that's something, and you can change that, actually. The units that are displayed, that's an option for how you want them displayed, either Imperial units or metric units. Like I said, I was in the military a long time, and we just got used to using metric units. So for me, it's fairly straightforward to think that way, but you're right, it's... can be a little bit interesting when you're dealing with European versus Imperial units, or versus American versions of units. So now we're going to end Gale's turn. Lae'zel is going to be next, and she has an 85% chance to hit here. And that was a critical hit. So now we just have one Entombed Scribe left, who is making its way around, but again, you can see for Lae'zel to move there, it's 20 meters away. And that means that even when it dashes, when you dash, you double your movement speed. So that would go to 18 meters. It's not even going to be able to get in the door by coming over here. And that means that it's not going to be in visual range of anybody here. So it's not going to be able to cast any attack spells when it moves to get within range. So we don't want to move out of this room. Shadowheart's turn is here, and we could move her out of this room, but you see, we still can't see the scribe around the corner. But if we move Shadowheart out here, it's going to be able to move around the corner and cast a spell at us. There's no need. We can manage the combat better than that by just managing the movement of the enemies. So we're just going to leave Shadowheart right where she is, and we're going to leave our bard right where she is. The scribe is dashing, and see, it moves around the corner and moves into here, and because it dashed, it cannot take an attack action afterward. So now we are able to get a free round of attacks on it all from here. And again, that is key. Positioning is key in Dungeons & Dragons tabletop, but it's even more key in the Baldur's Gate 3 video game here. You can very easily manage how much damage you can take as well as how much you can deal just by anticipating your positioning and getting your characters where you want them to be before or during that combat. Okay? So for Gale, I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to hold his action. The two characters, if you have a dashed outline around a character, that means that you can interchange between any of those two characters. You do not have to go in order up here. If your characters both have a large portrait, that means they are both free to go before either the turn ends or the enemy gets to go. So I'm going to hold Gale's turn because Lae'zel might be able to end this just with a main hand strike here. And she did. So I don't have to waste a spell slot or use a cantrip from Gale I can just end the combat by holding his action and going to somebody else to continue the fight. Okay? And that's something very important as well, is managing your resources. So your bardic inspirations are limited per long rest. Your spell slots are obviously limited per long rest. Your things like Pommel Strike are limited to a short rest, per short rest, and that sort of stuff. So you want to manage your resources, and if you can deal with an enemy with a melee attack and not have to use one of your rechargeable resources, then that's always an option that you should consider as you go through combat. So we do have a conversation here with Shadowheart that we want to have.
Rising from the dead just to protect some dusty baubles. Fools. Their trinkets may be worth a few coins all the same.
And yes, watching the conversation, I love watching the input that you guys have with each other in the chat. Yes, rogues are going to get, at level 2, they're going to get cunning actions. And those 2 cunning actions are dash and dodge, or dash and disengage, which means they can then use dash as a bonus action. For everybody else, dash is an action. You can see down there at the bottom, it's got the green icon next to it.
No rest for the wicked.
So that means that if an enemy dashes towards you, it cannot take an attack action afterward. It can still use a bonus action. So if it has a bonus action that it can use to attack you, then it can certainly do that. Same thing with you. If you dash, that uses up your action, and then you will just have your bonus actions left when you get to the end of wherever you're trying to dash to.
Still breathing, despite everything.
Yes, I do know, Jerry, the full version playthrough that's going to start upon release is going to be a Dragonborn Paladin. So we will certainly be starting that up once the full version releases. So we'll do some quick searching here of the scribes, and you can see that we have a heavy key. And now we're going to do some other searching here inside this room. We have a couple of vases. And for those of you who are new to the live streams, you're going to see this quite a bit. I've played several playthroughs now, and I know for a large part what I'm going to find and not going to find in crates, vases, boxes, that sort of stuff. However, you're going to see me search almost all of them. And that's because in the full version of the game, what you're experienced with in early access might change. It not just might, but it's going to change. You can find what may seem to be very innocuous things in these locations when you're searching, but those can be crafting supplies, they can be camp supplies, which means you can do more long rests. They can be a multitude of different things, and they can also be quest items as well, such as keys and that sort of stuff that are going to make it easier for you to progress through the game. So you're going to see me search almost everything that I come across, and that's just a habit for me to get ready for the full version of the game, where finding those items for free to make your life easier to do certain things in the game is going to be key to how you progress through the game. So now I can search this heavy chest. And we have some gold. We have a copper ring. And we have the Amulet of Lost Voices. Now, here's the first piece of jewelry that we've been able to pick up. The Amulet of Lost Voices allows you to cast Speak with the Dead. And Speak with the Dead is a spell that allows you to do exactly that. For those of you who got to watch the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movie that came out, you saw the Speak with the Dead spell used in a very humorous way. ironically, that spell was also portrayed fairly well in the movie and how it works. But for the effects of jewelry, if we equip that amulet, now if we highlight Jorvalen, you can see that we have the Speak with the Dead spell available to us. However, it also is grayed out, and that is because we are not proficient with this equipped shield. I put this shield on for a very specific reason off stream at the end of our encounter, and that's so that I could highlight how this whole proficiency and armor thing works with spells that you're going to be casting. So this interaction here is very, very specific, and that's why you can see how all of my spells were grayed out during that combat, and that's because I am not proficient with shields. Okay, so if you look at my character sheet here, you can see that under armor, I'm only proficient with light armor. If you go to Lae'zel, she's proficient with all the armor types as well as shields. I am not proficient with shields, so that is going to limit my spell casting ability. So if I unequip that, now you can see all of my spells come back and are available to be cast. Okay, just an illustration that even though you're not proficient with something, if I equip it, my armor class does go up, so I get a benefit from holding that shield. However, because I'm not proficient with it, I'm also going to have negatives that go along with that. And one of those negatives is illustrated here in my lack of the ability to cast spells anymore once that shield is equipped. Okay, so just to give you an illustration there of how it works. Now, you can see also when you hover over the Speak with the Dead spell, is you're allowed to use this spell once per long rest. Okay, and it allows you to ask questions to corpses. So, skeletons and creatures killed with acid, fire, lightning, necrotic, or radiant damage no longer have a mouth and can't be made to talk using this spell. Okay, so there are limitations here, and it doesn't work on the undead. So here, all we fought was undead. So there's not going to be any opportunity for us to use Speak with the Dead. However, we're going to come back to this amulet in a little bit because we are going to have an opportunity to use it, and I want to showcase how it works and what you can do with it. So next you can see that we have a plaque here.
Here lies the guardian of tombs. Through knowledge comes atonement.
Yes, your question, Jay, about the hotbars, you're going to have in the full release an opportunity to expand your hotbar vertically so that it has more spaces available to you. That's one of those quality of life improvements that Larian has added. So you'll see that played out more in the full version, but yes. So here you can see that we can search the sarcophagus here, and that's what we're going to do.
So he has spoken, and so thou standest before me, right as always. What a curious way to awaken. Now, I have a question for thee. What is the worth of a single mortal's life? Curiosity. Nothing more. Wilt thou answer my question?
you do have some options here in this interaction, like you do with most interactions in the game. However, you definitely want to play this in a peaceful way. There are really great benefits for the interaction playing out in a way that benefits you. So that's how we're going to do it.
So, I ask again, what is the worth of a single mortal life? And thus, balance is achieved. If all are at war, none can win. Very well. I am satisfied. We have met, and I know thy face. We will see each other again at the proper time and place. Farewell.
So now you can see that the character here, Withers, is going to be moving away. And yes, Mr. Pickles, you are definitely right. I love the fact that people are experienced with early access. Withers is a very, very useful character. And you can talk some more to Withers. We are certainly going to do that here.
We have nothing more to discuss. Continue on thy way, as if I were not here. I must attend this place after so many years away. We will see each other again soon. The mechanics of fate would be difficult to explain to one such as thyself. Regardless, it will occur.
Okay.
And bone dust. Still comforting after all this time.
Just letting the dialogue play out there. Yes, I gave you a sense of urgency on how to play out the interactions with this character here. There are, as I said when it started, there are multiple ways to play out that encounter. Withers is an integral part of the game mechanics, however, and that's why the ending of the encounter, however you played it out, is all going to end up in different versions of the same thing. Withers serves a very specific purpose in the game. He says he's going to see you again, and that is absolutely true. He is going to see you again. So you don't have to really worry as much about the urgency that I gave you concerning Withers. However, just realize, like I said previously, there are multiple ways to play out every encounter. In this case, they're all going to end up 6 of one, half dozen the other as far as the end result of it. Okay, so now I'm going to explore a little bit more. And I'm going to come around here, and I'm actually going to break my group here. Going to have Shadowheart cast Guidance.
Looks like someone wanted to bury their secrets.
Okay, and then we have the Book of Dead Gods over here on the shelf. So we're going to go interact with it.
This book is far lighter than it should be with such a massive log.
Okay, so we have 2 checks here to make. We have a strength check and we have an arcana check. So the arcana check, we're getting -1 from our intelligence. We're getting +1 from Jack of all trades and a 1d4 from guidance. If we use a strength check, we're going to get +1 from Jack of all trades and 1d4 from guidance. So it's better to try and use a strength check here. You can see the DC is 15. So we don't have a great chance to pass it. Right now it's somewhere in between a 50-50 at best and about a 75% chance of failure at worst. So 25 to 50%, give or take. Oh, I love D&D. I love D&D. Our first roll of the day, and we roll a nat 20. What that means more than likely is that we're going to be rolling natural ones for the rest of the day. You can't get but I love the randomness of it all.
As the lock opens, a loose page comes with it. Magic pulses from the parchment. What was once script is now an obliterated scrawl. You have a sense these are names, a list. But of what?
Okay, so now we have a religion check. DC of 10. We've got a bonus of 1 to 4, so better than 50-50 even at the minimum. And guidance helped pass us. You can see how important guidance as a cantrip is to have in your party. That 1d4 roll is just so important. It's hard to overestimate how important guidance can be in your playthrough. So that's why I've brought Shadowheart back into the party for a little bit, is so that we can benefit from that spell.
Gods. These are the names of gods, once lost but now restored after the Second Sundering. Entire pantheons have dwindled and been reborn, silently recorded by this book.
Okay, so now you also see our inspirations here. Inspirations are very valuable, and if you look up here at the top of your character screens, you'll see the number of inspirations you have. You're allowed to have up to 4 inspirations at any one time. And basically, as it states, if you fail an ability check roll, this will allow you to re-roll it at the cost of 1 inspiration for every re-roll. So if you have 4 inspirations, you could re-roll 4 ability checks if you fail them each and every time, hoping to get one that's going to pass. Inspirations can be very, very useful. However, you also need to realize that there's a cap of 4. Once you have 4, you cannot gain more than that. So it's going to be useful to use them and always have space for more inspirations to show up instead of just failing a roll. If you have 4 inspirations, then you definitely want to use one and free up an inspiration slot so that later on, if something happens and you gain another inspiration, you have an open slot for it to go into, basically. Okay? So inspirations max out at 4, and it's always best to have 1 open spot available for inspiration. So don't intentionally fail a roll if you have maxed out inspiration. You want to, in most normal conditions, free up an inspiration slot so that you always have one available for you. Okay, but inspirations are completed, like it says, through background goals, and you can highlight over this. So these are optional secret goals that you get as going through role playing, things that your character would normally do or things that they would normally interact with. That book would have been the perfect thing for Gale to interact with. But even if Gale wasn't the person to interact with it, because we did have a character go through that interaction, Gale's going to get an inspiration from it. And that inspiration goes into a pool of, again, 4 that anybody can use. So that kind of introduces you to the mechanics behind inspirations. So something very important in the game as you're going to go through. So again, we moved up close to the chest, and we did not get a perception check, so it's not trapped, so we can click on it. Again, a cup that's worth a moderate amount of gold, but nothing that we need to pick up. So the sarcophagus is here, and again, as was brought up in the comments a little bit ago, you can hold Alt. The Alt key does a highlight that will pop up items that are within range that you can interact with. So the sarcophagus here, we can move. There's a glaive. And you can see that now we have a new icon that has popped up on our menu here. This icon means that if I send this glaive to Jorvalen, it's going to encumber me. Okay? Encumbering means that you're not allowed to move fast, and your movement is cut down when you get into turn-based mode. So you can send this glaive to anybody else in your party. However, if I pick it up, I'm going to be encumbered, and I'm going to be dealing with the consequences thereof. So I'm going to send this to Lae'zel. The soul coin doesn't weigh very much, so I'm going to pick it up.
Coin. Wonder what it's worth.
Now, if you look at your inventory, you can see down here, and I mentioned this briefly, you now have the encumbrance down here, which is the amount of weight that you can carry. It's not going to give you an exact number down here in this bar, but you can see that there is a white section, a yellow section, and a red section. So if you pick up enough items to be encumbered here, you can also be heavily encumbered, and these have different effects on a bunch of different things. When you're encumbered, you can't, or when you're heavily encumbered, you can't jump at all. They have effects on how much your movement speed is, and that sort of stuff while you're moving around. So you try and stay underneath that limit. And we'll be exploring this more as we go along, and we'll get more in depth into the encumbrance limits. But for the most part, your encumbrance is not an issue for most of early access anyway, because you have ready access to people who you're able to sell all of these excess goods off to and free up your carry weight. Also, you can send these heavy items, like down there on the bottom. You can see down here that the item weight, it's 12 pounds. So if we pick this up, it's going to add 12 pounds to our carry, or how much we're carrying, and that counts towards your weight limit, which again is determined directly by your strength. Okay, so we're going to get more into this, but it hasn't been, at least in early access, that big of an impact, simply because once you get down here on the shore, you can see that your characters have much higher numbers based upon their higher strength characteristics, and they can carry more items. So you've got plenty of carry weight available to you for the most part in early access. This may become more important as you go. So out here in this area, you can see that we can move up to here. If you try and jump, there's not enough space. There's nowhere to go out here in this area for now. But that doesn't mean that there might not be something in the full version. So just be aware of it. You can see that it shows up on your mini-map, but there's no outlined area to be able to move through. So as we continue exploring here, we are going to go back,
Might be useful.
because we are not finished exploring this entire area here before we leave it. So now we can group everybody together, and we definitely want to pick up the Book of Dead Gods. Again, books are, for the most part, small amounts of carry weight for a decent-ish amount of gold. Okay? So if you pick it up, you can see it weighs half a pound, but it's worth 14 gold. So it gives you, a decent amount of value for your carry weight that you're getting out of it. Now, it did mention when we read the Book of Dead Gods that a piece of paper glowing with magical energy fell out of it, and it gets you a scroll. In this case, the Scroll of Ray of Enfeeblement. So that scroll is now in our inventory. We can choose to use it. We can choose to give it to Gale and have him read it and try and learn the spell off of it. We can do a bunch of different things with it, but it is ours now to do what we want with. And that was just by passing the check to open up the book itself so that that spell, or that scroll, we would have access to. Party experience is shared amongst all of the party members. Now, your party members have different requirements for how much XP they need to level up. So they're all going to be slightly different, but not all that big of a difference. But they are going to be slightly different as all single-class characters. Once in the full version you get to multi-classing, that will be a little bit more apparent and the differences in those classes. Okay, so we do have one more thing that we don't want to forget, and that's that we want to take a look inside the sarcophagus, and we get gold, and this is where your first soul coin is really meant to be encountered. Okay, but again, you don't want to forget to search the sarcophagus. You clicked on it to start the cutscene with Withers, and it's very easy to forget about it, that you can come back and search for it again. And it's got a decent amount of gold. So now you can see from our mini-map that where we are, we have an exit out this way. That's just marked by this quest marker for things that are in the overworld. But we have another way that we can go, and that's out through this door up here. Okay. So this door is locked. Okay, so holding Alt and looking around this area, there's not much else that we can look at here. Okay, we have our door to this exit over here that we explored. So if we are going to continue on through this area, we're going to need to go in the way that we have chosen to enter here. Yes, that is something that we will be exploring as we go along here, because Astarion is not in our party. However, we are going to be bringing Astarion back into our party here, and we're going to explore that through a different way here. And what I mean by that is that inside of your resting mechanic, we have short rests, which are available. We have 2 of them, and then our long rest. We're going to take a short rest here, just to get some hit points back and that sort of stuff. Long resting takes you back to your camp. Okay. However, if you go to your map, you can fast travel to your camp. Once you are in your camp, now you have the opportunity to change out characters inside of your camp. And you do not have to spend camp supplies to take a long rest if you don't want to. Okay? So now we're back in our camp. We are going to talk to Shadowheart.
All's well, I hope, aside from the obvious. If you're sure. Fine. I'll be here whenever you rediscover your taste in company.
Sassy. And then we're going to talk to Astarion.
Well, hello. What can I do for you? Darling, I thought you'd never ask. Lead on.
And yes, Dracula, we are certainly going to be talking about that here in just a second when we get up to that door. Okay. Now you can see that somebody has joined us in our camp. Withers has made his way to our camp, and he's now going to be a permanent part of the camp. Okay? And Withers serves a very specific purpose here. So we're going to go talk to him, and we'll find out what that purpose is.
We meet again. as predicted. I shall be here in thy camp for whenever thou hast need of my services. A mending of the threads between life and death. Should thou or any of thy compatriots perish, I will cleave soul to body once more. A matter of coin. Then I shall wait here patiently until it is acquired.
Okay, Withers, like I said, serves a very specific game mechanic. Your characters, and we've talked about this briefly before, you have access to Scrolls of Revivify. Scrolls of Revivify allow you to bring a companion who is dead, who has actually full died, back to life with 1 hit point. Scrolls of Revivify are very useful when you're in combat and a character physically dies. You can use one of these to bring them back to life. However, you have a limited number of them. And you see that Shadowheart has 2, Lae'zel has 1, I have 1. So you have a limited number that are available to you right off the bat. In the full version, there are obviously going to be places where you can buy more of these and that sort of stuff. They are fairly expensive, but you can buy them, but they're most useful for combat situations or situations where you do not easily have access to your camp. If a character dies, you can simply come back to your camp and use Withers to revive them if you have 200 gold available to you. Okay? So that's the important game mechanic that Withers serves in the game, and that's why Withers is one way or another going to end up in your camp, because he serves that mechanic that if your characters die, they're never really gone from the game. You can always bring them back, even if you don't have any Scrolls of Revivify. You can always bring them back if you have some gold, just by talking to Withers and having them brought back. Okay? So don't think that your characters are ever truly dead. Withers is going to be available to you in your camp to be able to deal with this. Okay. So now we're gonna click here on this to take a long rest, and we don't have enough camp supplies, so we're not going to get any spell slots or any of that sort of stuff. So you're going to get a partial rest. Okay? So it says but your hit points and spell slots will only be restored up to half their maximum, and you won't regain any short rests. That's fine. We were only doing it to change our characters out anyway. And now you are back where you were. Okay? So that's an option to change out characters in your party just by fast traveling to camp, or you could click long rest here and just ignore all the warnings about camp supplies, because you're going to get those same camp supply warnings when you click on the bedroll in your camp anyway. Okay? So now, as was mentioned previously, we have a heavy oak door here that's locked. Okay? So if you examine the door, you can see that the door has medium toughness. Okay? So medium toughness, it says this material is unusually strong. Only a hit that deals at least 22 damage can damage it. Okay, so the door has 36 hit points. You can
Enough waiting. I crave
walk
blood.
up to it with Lae'zel and hit it.
Show no mercy.
She's got a 100% chance to attack it. Okay? In that case, you can see that the door was hit for 22 slashing damage. She rolled a 14, so she was going to hit. The damage roll was 8, Plus 3 was 11. However, the door is vulnerable to slashing damage, which means that it caused double damage, so it rolled at least 22. And that is what was able to damage the doors. Okay? And as for your question, the heavy key is still in our inventory. So if the key is in your inventory...
Let's see what this does.
And you click on a door, it's going to automatically use the key. You don't have to use a particular key on a particular door. If it's in your inventory, it's automatically going to use it. If that key is in somebody else's inventory, keys have a orange icon around them. So even if that key is in somebody else's inventory and you click on the door, it will move the key to your inventory and use that key. Okay? So there are multiple ways to approach dealing with locked areas or closed areas. So, but you have to be able to be aware of the toughness of whatever you're dealing with to be able to cause enough damage to be able to get through its limitations to cause physical damage to beat down the door. Okay? In this case, we brought Astarion back just so that we can lockpick. Not just for that, but in this particular case, this is what we're going to use him for. And this is something I wanted to highlight about the lockpicking skill again, just like we saw upstairs with his proficiencies. Doors just simply are not an impediment to Astarion. DC of 10, his total bonus is 7. We could add in a bardic inspiration, but there's no real need. He can only fail it with a 1 or a 2, so we've got a 90% chance of passing this. It's just one of those things to illustrate how important Astarion can be to the normal functioning of your party as you go, and how useful he can be in almost all aspects of it. But you don't have to do this. You can attack with Lae'zel, and she caused 30 damage, so it broke the door down. Okay? Now, why would you not just knock down every door? A couple of different reasons for that. First, as soon as I knock down this door, Lae'zel is making a main hand attack on it. She's no longer in hiding as soon as that door breaks. If there are enemies on the other side of that door, Lae'zel is now automatically going to be discovered, or more than likely discovered, by anybody on the opposite side because she's not in hiding anymore. So if you want to take a stealthy approach, then you can move Astarion up to lockpick that door. You can then put everybody into hiding. You can move them back out of the way, and you can have like Astarion move up, or somebody with proficiency in stealth move up, open the door, and have a better chance of passing a stealth check if there are enemies on the other side of that door. That is just things to think about when you're approaching this. That the smash and grab option, like we just did with Lae'zel, may get you through a door, but it may not be the best way to get you through that door. Okay? Just things to think about. So, holding Alt again as we move in here. Nothing in particular. So now we move farther in here, and you can see we do have some other things around here. We have a gilded chest around the corner. Yes, like I say, Drake, it is certainly an option. Smashing doors always is. So we're going to move up next to the chest. No perception check, so we can just search it. And there's some gold here. Okay, we do have another vase back here we can search. Nothing. Moving around, you can see that there is a book over here.
Maybe I need more pockets.
We're going to pick it up. You can see that book goes into our inventory here. Just a regular book. There's nothing special about it. But again, it is worth selling. Now we can move around over here to this side, and we have another door here. We're going to hold off going through that. We're going to make our way over here, and we have 2 opulent chests. We're going to make our way up next to the first one and open it up. Okay, just a couple of cups. Disappointing. Oops, and we picked up a jug. Not really an oops there. There's a reason for that, and I'll explain it here in just a second. We're going to move over toward this other opulent chest. And we have a necklace, so I'm going to pick it up. Okay, so now we have a door here, and you can see our icon is different. This is the interact icon, which is different from the open door icon that we have over here. This is letting you know that more often than not, if you're doing it on a door, you're going to be loading into a new area. So we're not going to go into this area yet. We're going to make our way over here to this door. And we're going to toggle our group mode. And we're going to go open the heavy doors here. Okay, those were not locked. So now we have this room here. And we're going to slowly make our way into it. We have a vase over here. And you see we got a perception check there. We failed, so I'm going to bring Astarion up.
One step at a time.
And he was able to perceive a trap here. Okay, and this is your introduction to traps, and it gives you something very important here, in that it says cover them with sufficiently heavy objects. Okay, this is a vent. If you look over it, it says you have the option to disarm it. So if you right click, you can disarm it if you have a trap disarm kit to eliminate this as a trap. However, it says that there are also other ways that you can go about dealing with this by covering them up with sufficiently heavy objects.
Flackets will be done.
What they mean by that is just what we saw last live stream with the rock. You can interact with these candelabrum here, but you can also click and drag them. And that's going to move it on top of that vent. And that keeps that vent from releasing its gases. Okay? Now you can...
One true way.
And we're going to explore this a little bit more. There's another perception check. There's another vent there. Just to illustrate, you can click and drag these. You see there's only a limitation on how far you can move them. But once you get it to that location, you can move around it and you can drag that item farther around. So if you're not in combat, you can just drag these all over the room. If you're in combat, like has been mentioned in a few of the comments, you can use your movement to drag these items around while you're in combat as well. So that will help you possibly position things like explosive barrels or things like that to help damage enemy combatants while you're moving around in combat. Okay, so we had 2 failed perception checks there.
All's well that ends not as bad as it could have.
Okay, so we have 1 failed perception check there. We want to move around. Okay, and we perceive that trap.
Is trapped.
This is going to be a little interesting.
Yes, let's.
Because there's another check here that you want to pass. Okay, and he was able to perceive the button that's here on the wall. That button is very important if you want to play this room in a particular way, and we do. So, highlighting one of our characters, again, moving them here, you can take this vase and you can search it, but you can also right-click on that vase and you can move it over here and put it on top of that vent. there are more than enough objects in this room to cover up all of the vents. Okay? Okay, failed a perception check there.
Not reaction.
Failed that one.
How delicious.
Failed that, so we have one last chance with Gale, and his wisdom is not good, so his chances of passing it are fairly low. We're actually going to move him around this way. Okay, and he was able to perceive it.
This place is more dangerous than
Kind of like the Harper stash. The one person who you don't expect to be able to pass it is actually able to pass it.
Have a lot on my mind. And, well,
Okay, so we have a skeleton here that we can search, and there's a bottle. And again, we're going to be keeping those. No, not a use in early access, but possibly in the full version.
watch how you go.
Okay.
There's a trap.
So we do have another trap here. We can pick up the vase once we get close enough. Okay. Why is she not able to pick up the vase for some reason? We'll move Lae'zel over here to do it. Okay, so this vase is not able to be moved here. For some reason, it's red everywhere, so we'll go pick up... Nope, neither one of those appear to be. So, interesting. We'll move Lae'zel over here, and she perceived that trap as well.
There are traps here.
So, we do have some boxes that we can move around. Okay, and we want to make sure that gets set right on top of that vent. And we can do the same thing with this one here. And again, we don't have to do this because I'm going to complete this room in a slightly different way. But this is illustrating that you can cover these all up and keep this trap from triggering. Now, the reason that you're covering them up, they let out a poisonous gas when you do something to trigger it. But then that gas is not, I mean, it is damaging, but it's not all that bad in and of itself. However,
Stay vigilant.
you have these gargoyle heads that, again, are listed as traps. You can disarm them. If you look at them, you can see it says it's got greater toughness. So here you need a much higher damage roll to be able to damage these. So, and if you see, just looking around, you don't even have to actually discover them, but you have multiple gargoyle heads
Stay vigilant.
around this room.
There are traps here.
So we're going to come over and search these sarcophagi here. We have a maul. We can send that to Lae'zel as well as the shield, and she's just carrying these things. There's a ring and another soul coin. Okay, moving around this area over here.
Boots have seen everything.
There's two more gargoyle heads. So you can see there's 4 of them over here on that side. If you cross to the other side, you'll see there's not one here, but there are 3 more over here.
Trap. Be cautious.
We have another sarcophagus we can search with a rapier, and we have some ringmail armor. And there's going to be 1 more gargoyle head.
Be wary.
Okay.
This place is trapped.
So, now the first thing I'm going to do is move everybody back out of this room.
The air is ripe with magic.
Moving.
I've got a long road ahead. All right.
And I'm going to get ready for
If not
this
over,
trap
then
here.
through.
Now, like I said, there are two ways to deal with this trap. This trap is going to trigger when you search the sarcophagus. Okay? So, the best way to go about it, if you do not have the ability to find this button, if you weren't able to perceive it, the best way to do it is to cover up all the gas vents. That's going to keep the gas from coming out. That gas is flammable. And when the gas comes out, the gargoyles are going to start shooting fireballs. And if they ignite that gas, there's going to be a massive explosion that covers this entire room. And you're going to find yourself in some serious problem. Okay? So, if you cover up the gas vents, you're still going to have the gargoyles shooting fire periodically across this room. Okay? Now, those gargoyles, the fireballs that come from them can be blocked by various things. So like the tall candelabra here, you can put them in front of the gargoyle head, and the fireball that it shoots will hit it and not come all the way through the room. Okay? So there are ways to minimize this trap and how you deal with it. Another way to minimize the damage taken from this trap is to go into turn-based mode. And in turn-based mode, the gargoyle heads are going to fire a fireball, and then the turn's going to end, and you can move around those fireballs so that you're not walking through this room and a fireball gets shot out and hits you. Okay? Here, we're going to avoid this entirely by using this button to disarm the trap. As soon as you trigger the sarcophagus and you loot it, once you exit out of the looting screen, you're going to hear what sounds like a clock ticking. And that's a timer ticking down. When that timer ends, the trap triggers both the gas and the fireballs. If before that ends, you can hit the button, then nothing's going to happen. You can still turn the trap off after it's triggered by hitting the button. However, if there's gas out here, that gas is going to stay, and you'll have to burn it off yourself. Okay, so for now, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the sarcophagus. We're going to loot these two. And it put you into turn-based mode. This is different in patch 9. In patch 8, it did not automatically put you in turn-based mode. But in turn-based mode, now you have an action. If you just try and move yourself out of here, you certainly can. And you will end your turn, and then the trap will trigger. However, if we go up and use our action to press the button, just says click, we can exit out of turn-based mode, and you see nothing happens. That button disarms that trap and allows you to not have to deal with anything in here. This door here is locked, and this is the same ancient door that we encountered from the outside when we first started exploring the beach. Okay, so if we walk up to this door, now you can see that that door is unlocked, and that is what the key in your inventory does. Okay, the keys allow you to unlock that door to get out. So you're meant to exit the chapel this way. You're not meant to enter it this way, and that's why the DC of that lockpick is so hard, is to keep you, to try and nudge you into entering this chapel in the correct way, so to speak. But you can enter it multiple different ways, as we showed. Okay? So that kind of gives you an in-depth guide to how to deal with traps and things like that as you find them. And how to look around your surroundings and kind of analyze what might be happening around with various things and see if you might be able to approach them from different ways. Okay? If you take your time and you approach things slowly, then you will most likely have a much, better way of making your way through this through any encounter inside of Baldur's Gate 3 and Dungeons & Dragons in general.
Nothing.
Okay, so now we traveled into this new area, and now you can hear voices on the other side of this door. So, like Dracula was talking about previously, if you want to smash and grab through the door, feel free. You are definitely going to be entered into combat when you do it. Okay, because there are people on the other side of this door, and they are not going to be friendly. So I'm going to try and manage this encounter, again, with my positioning a little bit. So I'm going to put everybody in hiding, and I'm going to toggle my group. I'm going to keep Gale back here, kind of in this corner. I'm going to move Astarion over here in the darkness as well, still. Kind of over here. Going to move Lae'zel
Not one false move.
right up beside the door. And I'm going to move my bard over here kind of in the shadows as well. And this is what I was talking about. You can see the icons. I'm heavily obscured right now. If I move over here, I'm now in a clear area. Okay? So I'm hiding in an obscured area, so as soon as somebody sees me, I'm caught. Right? So the candles are illuminating this area, the sunlight's illuminating this, however, this area here is not. Okay? I am in hiding here, and I am heavily obscured. Right? So now I can trigger this door. Now this door, again, is locked, and I'm not able to pick it. That's what the X means. Lock picking is impossible here for this door. So, again, multiple ways to approach this. And if you look through the log down here, you can see 1, 2, 3. There's at least 3 people in here that are talking. And you can see that they were talking about Gimblebach earlier. Gimblebach died at the overworld entrance to this place. So this group is the same thief group that was with Gimblebach. So just to let you know that things are going to turn hostile here when you get into this area here. So actually, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open that door, and I'm going to put Lae'zel kind of as the first person that they're going to see. That's why I want her kind of around the corner here. And now I'm going to use Astarion just to ranged attack the door. Okay, and you can see that they recognize that attack. They know that it happened. I did not cause any damage to the door because the door has lesser toughness. So I have to cause at least 10 points of damage to damage the door. My attack from him did not breach that limit, so he didn't cause any damage. Right? So that's what I mean by paying attention to the damage limits. And you can see up there at the top, no damage is going to be caused against the door because the weapon that I have simply cannot cause enough damage to cause the door to break. However, Lae'zel's can. So if I attack it here, and I kind of want to move her just back slightly to get an angle on the door where she doesn't have to move forward.
Something's rotten about this.
Okay. Okay. So they're going to come walking in here. And now I can get off. So they didn't come in the room to investigate, which is good. That's interesting that they didn't. Okay, so there's Barton. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an item here. I'm going to use a void bulb. Okay, so I'm going to move out here a little bit. And I'm going to throw a void bulb right out here. Okay. The void bulb does exactly what it says it's going to do. Okay? It draws everything into an area around it. Okay? Now, what happened there was that it dragged this oil barrel in, and that oil barrel burst, and the fire here ignited it. Ignited that oil barrel. So now we've got a flaming fire surface for 2 more turns, right? But it also brought everybody active into combat, and they're all kind of... There's a group of 4 of them right here in this area all together. Grouped up enemies can help you out in a lot of different ways, as we've already seen.
What?
Okay? Now, Gale does have some AoE options here for sleep. So we have 8 hit points here. We have 12 here, 12 here, and 12 here. We can put up to 24 hit points worth of enemies to sleep. So Gale could get into combat right now by casting sleep around an area here and seeing how many people are affected by it. Okay? He could also go with one of his chromatic orbs. Okay, and say thunder. Okay? Or poison. You can see that has an AoE damage that happens around it. Or fire, and doing the same thing. So, grouping enemies up and then having a turn to attack them normally is a good thing. Okay? So, I think what we're going to do here is... I'm looking at hit points just again one more time. Because he's going to have advantage on this attack roll, so I think I am going to go with acid and create an acid surface here as well. Okay. So now they're standing in acid. When their turn comes up, you'll see what happens with that. And now Lae'zel, oh, and he did not get entered into combat there. So I'm just going to start him into combat with that. So now with Lae'zel, she can make a main hand attack right here on Sefri and remove her completely from the fight right off the bat. Alright, so now we've got 3 characters left. They are all in an acid surface. Okay, so if you examine them, their armor class has been reduced by 2. So that makes them much easier to hit with all of my ranged attacks and my melee attacks. So now for Astarion, can move out here and I can kind of look and see what we have. So we have a range-based character here, another range-based. They all have ranged-based attacks. So from here, I can try a sneak attack against only 1 hit point there, so I think I'll leave him. And I'll try a sneak attack ranged here. She's burning. So I think I'll do that anyway, though. Okay, so now I've eliminated 2 people from the fight. And now my bard still gets to go. And with 1 hit point left, I'm going to remove Barton from the fight. Right? So that helps you manage by grouping them up, causing an acid surface, which reduces their armor class by 2 and makes them that much easier to hit. I'm now able to clear out in a group of individuals a lot easier. Okay, so again, positioning yourself back here in this area and grouping your enemies up where you're able to attack them is going to help you out. Now, we do have another character back here, Hasid, who now has to move around this fire surface to get to me, and he's at least 20 meters away from her and at least probably 12 meters away from Lae'zel. And if you examine him, his movement speed is 9 meters, so he's going to have to dash, and he's not going to be able to attack me on his turn. He's going to be the next to move, and then Mari is going to get an attack. There's nothing we can do to prevent that right now. Okay, so he dipped his weapon in the fire surface, and he's dashing. And he chose to run through the fire. Okay, and Mari got off a ranged attack. So you saw the dip mechanic. The dip mechanic is whenever you're next to a surface, you can choose to dip your weapon in that surface and coat your weapon with it. So you can coat it with acids, you can coat it with fire, any of the damageable surfaces, and you can impart that damage bonus to your weapon. So I don't know if it's going to show it here. It's not. But you have that option available to you using one of your action or your bonus actions, which is right here. So you dip a weapon into a surface to alter the surface or enhance the weapon. So you can use like a flaming weapon to evaporate a water surface or something like that, or to melt an ice surface into water. Those sorts of things by using your bonus action to dip. So now his weapon is now going to cause fire damage in addition to the regular damage that it gets to inflict. Okay? So now what I'm going to try and do is with Astarion, I'm going to try and move him over here and get him out of line of sight of Mari. I'm going to try and move him. I'll move him back here and see if I can use my bonus action to hide.
Let's have a little.
I can. So now that he's in hiding, I can do another sneak attack because you see at the top I have advantage from being hidden. And this is the benefit that Astarion brings to your party, is that he can move around the battlefield, go into hiding, and get off a sneak attack. And as we learned previously, sneak attacks have advantage against your target, and also if any ally is within 1.5 meters of the target, you'd never have disadvantage. But it allows you to shoot the weak spots. You get double damage here, basically. Okay, so we're going to make a sneak attack against Hasid. Actually, we're not. Well, yes, we are. Yeah, we want to remove Hasid from the battlefield because he's going to be the next enemy that's going to get a chance to attack. Okay, so that caused 15 damage. Now we can go to Lae'zel, and again he's got 7 hit points left. We can try with our bard here
Never a dull moment.
and see if we have anything that's going to cause 7 points of damage. So we can try Dissonant Whispers. That's a wisdom save. If you look at him, his wisdom is 10, so he's not getting any bonuses to the save against it. So let's see if we can cast Dissonant Whispers here. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I forgot I exited the Dissonant Whispers attack to examine him. So it did a ranged attack instead, but luckily it worked out. and we were able to kill him. So now that he's gone, now Lae'zel has a free path to move out here toward Mari and get off a main hand attack. And she critical misses on a 70% chance to hit. Great. So we're actually going to initiate her action surge here. Action surge is only able to be cast on her. When you do it, that instantly gives her another action. Okay, so now she can try another attack for, again, 70%. And she's able to make the kill. Alright? So you saw a few different mechanics in play there. First, grouping up your enemies normally allows you to cast AoE spells or things like that that can damage multiple enemies at the same time. And that's why the void bulbs are such a great object that you pick up during the prologue. They pull all enemies in a 6-meter radius together into a certain area, and that allows you to cause damage to multiple enemies at the same time. You also saw the dip mechanic, in that you can dip your weapons into damaging surfaces and apply that damage to your weapon as well. Or you can use your, like a flaming weapon to evaporate water and things like that that might be on the ground that you may want to get past or get around. Okay. You also saw the sneak attack mechanic that Astarion has. He's able to move around, and if you go use your bonus action to go into hiding with him first, because hide is a bonus action, you can then hopefully sneak attack from the shadows to cause double damage. Right? So you get to see several different mechanics there all in play in the same fight that are all going to help you better manage encounters and minimize your damage and maximize their damage. Okay? So in that entire encounter, we took 2 points of damage to our bard, and that was it. And we managed to kill 5 enemies, one of which has a lot more hit points than we do. Okay? So, very, very useful to think about your encounters before you go into them. So, we're going to do some searching here.
What's in here?
And I'll go back through some of your comments here. So, yes, I know, Dracula, you love the fact that I knocked the door down, so that was just for you. So is the damage caused by surfaces applied at the start or the end of the turn? That depends upon how you're initiating that surface. If you're initiating that surface outside of combat, then it is it's brought in as soon as that surface is walked over or encountered by whoever you're dealing with. If you create that surface while you're already in combat with them, then that surface takes effect as soon as it's brought up or as soon as it appears. So there is other damage that goes along with surfaces, though, or not with surfaces, but for instance here we had an explosion that happened, and that explosion caused damage to Hasid here before, just because of the explosion, because of the torch that was laying on the ground. Okay, so other things outside of the surface, like an explosion due to a surface combusting, can cause immediate damage that doesn't have to wait for their turn to happen. It can cause that damage as soon as it takes effect. So we're going to move all of these items over to Lae'zel just for storage right now. And we can continue searching here. So a scroll of burning hands can go to Gale, but the rest of it can go into storage for Lae'zel. Another book here that is just a regular standard book. There's nothing special about it. We can go search Torga. So more weapons that we will be able to sell later, and I must have misclicked on one of those because now you can see that I'm encumbered. So I must have picked up that knife, and I did. So this is a chance, I guess, to show a little bit about how encumbering works. So I'm going to click way out here and watch how fast she moves. See, she's just walking. Okay. If I use Lae'zel to do the same thing, you see she's running. So that's the first thing it does, is you're no longer able to run when you're out of combat. The second thing is if I click on jump, you can see how far the jump radius is. Okay? So if I exit out of jump and I move this dagger over to Lae'zel, so I'm no longer encumbered, and now I jump, you can see how much bigger the jump radius is. It cuts your jump radius in half. Okay? The other thing is it does... Whoops. I will go back and encumber myself again. Hey, if I go into... Actually, I don't think I'll need to go into turn-based mode to look at it. Whoops. No, my character sheet here. So, my movement is still 11 meters here. Okay? So, when you get heavily encumbered, you can no longer jump at all, and your movement speed is cut in half. Okay? In tabletop, encumbrance has other things that can affect you in different ways, and we'll deal more with encumbering, the effects of being encumbered as well, and heavily encumbered as we go through. And it's a little bit different in the game versus tabletop. Here, like it says, your movement speed is reduced and your jump distance is cut in half. And when you're out of combat, you don't run anymore. You only walk, which really is a pain in the butt. It's just a pain as you're going through. So, basic poison. We'll talk about this. We're going to send this to Astarion. And we've got a short bow and an alchemist fire, which we'll pick up. And we'll search Mari, and this should be the last one. Got some thieves' tools, which will go to Astarion, and some other weapons that Lae'zel can just store, as well as some armors. Okay. So, looking at our inventory real quick, we did pick up a few things here. So, first is weapons. So, looking at Gale, if you highlight Gale and now you mouse over an item, you can see whether or not he's proficient with that item. Okay? So, if you ever want to know if you're proficient or not, you can always go to your character sheet and you can see simple weapons, no martial weapons at all that Gale is proficient with. So you can see he can only use daggers, light crossbows, and quarterstaves. Or, once you're in your inventory, you can highlight a character, and it will tell you whether or not that character is proficient with it. So he is proficient with daggers, but not with short bows, not with mauls, not with rapiers, etc., etc. That also works for the armors. So you can see he can wear the simple robe, but he cannot wear the leather armor without, he's going to be non-proficient with it. Okay, so it's important to know that that will change, because now if I change to my bard, you can see she is proficient with short bows, so she could use that short bow. Okay, so if you ever want to see what your proficiencies are for weapons and armor, just highlight the character and you'll be able to see what they can use and what they can't. Okay, so Astarion's wearing padded armor, which is an 11 armor class. So this padded armor's 11, this leather armor's 11, so there's no benefit in armor class there. He's not proficient in heavy armor, so he can't use it. He's not proficient in medium armor, so he can't use that as well. So my simple jerkin is 11, so this leather armor doesn't do me any good to equip it on anybody. We picked up some gloves and some boots. For now, these, at this level of what type of boots they are, being leather, they are just cosmetic items. So if you put on a pair of leather gloves, they're going to change how your character looks. But that's all that they're going to do. There are different types of gloves and boots and helmets that can impart different abilities, but they may classify them then as armors, which you have to be proficient at to be able to get those bonuses from. Okay? So that's just looking through here. If you have upgrades for your weapons, then it's, you know, a good idea to take a look at them and see if you can use them. And one of those things is that we're going to look at is Astarion, because we picked up a scimitar. So if we highlight Astarion here, you can see he's not proficient with scimitars. However, scimitars are light and finesse weapons. So this is something that I quickly wanted to go over, because this is a question that I got quite a bit when it comes to proficiencies with your weapons and that sort of stuff. So a light weapon means that it can be dual wielded with another light weapon, right? So right now he's got a dagger. That's a light weapon, so he can dual wield 2 light weapons together. So now when he does a melee attack, he can use his bonus action to get an offhand attack with the second melee weapon. All right? You're also going to see something that happens down here. Watch very carefully at this location when I equip his second weapon. You see this icon lights up. This is the toggle dual wielding button. So now when I am in combat, if I just click on somebody to do a melee attack, it's going to do both my main hand and my offhand attack at the same time. Okay, so I have the opportunity to cause more damage. However, the offhand attack uses your bonus action. So if I just go, if this button's highlighted and I click on somebody, it's going to use my action to do the main hand attack, my bonus action to do the offhand attack, and then I'm out of actions. If you unhighlight this, that is basically saying that you're only going to use your main hand weapon. So you can see there's only one weapon there. Now there's 2. That's dual wielding. That's regular wielding. So now if I click on somebody, it's only going to use my main hand. And then I can click to do an offhand attack if I want, or I can use my bonus action for something else. So that's very important to realize, is that when you first equip a weapon like that, it's going to be toggled to dual wield both of those attacks. And you may be wondering, why can't I use my bonus attack after you've done it? So that icon right there is very hidden, but it can be very important to helping you manage your combat better. Okay, there are multiple ways to deal with this dual wielding as an option that's available in the game settings. But if you don't deal with your game settings before you start, this is how you toggle it on and off. Okay. Now, for people who are proficient with scimitars, scimitars are tied for the highest damage, light, and finesse weapons in the game. So Astarion is not proficient with scimitars, but for characters that are, such as a ranger, having dual wielding scimitars is one of the best dual wielding attacks that you can have in the game for a dexterity build. And why that's important for dexterity is because these are finesse weapons. Finesse weapons scales with your dexterity instead of your strength if your dex is higher. So it's going to be using your dexterity for your attack rolls and that sort of, and your damage rolls when you use a finesse weapon if your dexterity is higher. So if you're doing a dex build, you're looking for light and finesse weapons, and scimitars with their 1d6 are tied for the best dual wielding weapons in the game. Okay, but he's not proficient with them. So we have other options to look through in here. So rapiers are finesse weapons, but you can't dual wield them because they're not light. Okay. So right now, I don't think I have any short swords in my inventory. I do not. So the best options for dual wielding for Astarion are daggers. at this point. Okay, so we picked up that item, so that gives him ability to do more melee damage if we want to. Okay, and that's what I was talking about, Crunchy. They're tied for the highest damage in the game with short swords. Short swords also have the 1d6. They are both light and finesse weapons as well. So they are tied for having the highest damage. It's just you're going to find a scimitar faster in the game than you do a short sword. Okay, because I still have not picked up a short sword in my travels. That's why I wanted to highlight the scimitar first, just because it was the first thing that I picked up. You are also going to find in early access that the short swords are actually better because they have bonuses that come along with some of the short swords you find. You have the short sword of the first blood, you have short swords like that that have that you can find in early access that give you more benefits, whereas scimitars in early access, there aren't any scimitars that give you any bonuses except for at the very, very end of early access when you craft your own scimitar, if you want to craft it. Okay. So as far as weapon abilities, that's a good point, and that's something that we haven't focused on very much. And we can put, I don't have the short sword to show you, but proficiency unlocks is what I believe Crunchy is talking about here. When you are proficient with a weapon, and we'll just go to Lae'zel here and highlight it, with the scimitar, you unlock different types of attacks. So with the scimitar, you can flourish your weapon, or you can lacerate a target. Okay? So you unlock different attacks, and those different attacks pop up down here in this bar. So with the dagger, if you're proficient with it, you unlock a piercing strike, and that piercing strike would show up down here in your bar as a special type of attack. So the question is, are scimitars and short swords, do they have the same proficiency unlocks? And the answer, and I'm going to have to go look. I will look off stream and put a comment down below it. I do not think they have the same. I think you get a piercing strike with a short sword as opposed to the lacerate. I could be wrong about that. It's been a long time since I've looked at the proficiency unlocks for them. But that is the other thing to pay attention to, is you may get different proficiency unlocks based on the different types of weapons that you have available to you. Okay. All right, so that's going to finish up. We did a lot of talking there, but that kind of helps walk you through some of the different aspects of how D&D operates and how the weapons work. Okay. So next, we're going to quickly move into this room, and you see that something did happen, and it's flashing all over our screen, trying to remind us. And yes, Antonio, there, I don't have an option. Well, I do have an option for Gale. If we highlight Gale, he's not proficient with short bows. He's not proficient with hand crossbows. We don't have any other weapon that we can give him for a ranged attack that he will be proficient with. He's proficient with light crossbows. So I could take this light crossbow and move it over to him, and then I could have my bard equip the short bow. However, for the most part, I'm going to be sacrificing damage to do that. This is 1d8 versus 1d6. So my bard's ranged attack ability would go down at the expense of being able to give Gale a ranged attack. And for now, I'm going to have him focus more on his spells as opposed to his ranged attack. So yes, I would give him one if I had the option to give him something that was just in my inventory being unused. But I'm not going to drop my damage here just to be able to give him a ranged attack ability. When I can get something for there later on, there are multiple light crossbows that drop throughout the game, and I can pick that up later. So, but one thing you did notice is that we now have enough experience to level up here. And if you look at the, and it's not going to show it here, because I am ready to level up for everybody. But you can get to the level up through your character screens. You can get to them through down here under their icons. You can get to it through multiple different ways. We're going to hold off on that level up, and I think we're going to possibly end the stream. Well, it's already... Wow. There's been a lot of explanations during this stream. I love the comments. I just don't get as far through the live streams as I normally do when I'm explaining more things. So probably will want to do just some quick searching around here, and then we will do our level up, and that will probably take us through the end of the live stream. So we're going to go into this room here, and we're going to do some searching. I'm just going to get Lae'zel started up because she's the one that has carry weight left available. Again, books, you can read these books just by right-clicking on them and say reading them. You can send them to your camp, or you can just pick them up. I'm just going to take all these books in here. There's nothing special about them, but feel free to read them for the lore that they contain. For now, I'm just picking them up for the monetary value. And you want all of your books to be picked up by the same person, if you can. Because these books, like you can see here, there's 2 of them. They will stack in your inventory. Otherwise, you're going to have books spread out through multiple characters' inventories. And you really don't want that to happen. Okay, so we have a book here we could pick up. Okay, nothing else up here. More books. We're going to move to the other side. And just continue searching on through the various books that are here. And just picking up all of these books. And again, this is the only reason I'm doing this is just for the sale value. We're going to get to a point here where we're going to be able to sell all of these items off. And since she has a lot of carry weight available to her, it's easy just to pick these books up so that she can sell them later. Okay, so we do have a chest over here that we can search. An ink pot and a quill. Nothing that I really want to pick up here. We're going to toggle our group. And there was a perception check for a lever that's over here. Okay, and there's some candles.
Have a lot on my mind.
And we can group everybody back up. Okay, so what does the lever do? The lever we don't need to interact with now, because that lever unlocks a door that only matters if you're coming through it this way. Okay? So we don't need to deal with that lever, but if you are approaching the way that the chapel expects you to approach, which is through here, that lever will unlock a door so that you don't have to pick it. Okay, but we don't have to worry about that right now. So now we're going to move across to the other side over here. Holding Alt, nothing is showing up. Continue to hold Alt as you go. Am I encumbered? No, I'm not. Okay, we see we have another book over here laying on the shelf.
Don't mind if I do.
Okay, and we do have a couple of vases over here. And there's an ancient scroll. Okay, so it talks about a sealing ritual. And there's more lore here that goes along with this. But you'll learn there's nothing really other than you can just sell this off, but there is a basis in lore that goes along with it. So now we've explored all the areas here. We do have a lever that's going to take us into this area here. As soon as you open it up, you see we have a red icon and we have Andorn inside this room. Okay. Now, Andorn is our last hostile character in this area. He's got 18 hit points here. So we're going to toggle our group into hide, and we're going to break our group. And we're going to take Astarion. And you can see Andorn is facing the door. He was the person that we talked to through the door from the outside. Okay? So we're going to take Astarion, and we're going to bring him around here. In hiding. And we're going to stay out of that detection cone. We're going to bring him up behind Andorn. Alright, and now we can get a sneak attack melee on him because you can see we have advantage because we're in hiding. He's got a 94% chance to hit. Okay, caused 8 points of damage and put us into combat. He is surprised. His surprise turn is going to happen here in a second, so I can again, from where he is, go into hiding.
Let's find some prey.
Okay, now that is no longer going to work in the full version of the game. Right now, because I'm not in his detection cone, I can go into hiding. However, I am threatening him. See, he has an icon up at the top that says threatened. That's because he's within melee range of me right now. So that means he is threatened. And in the full version of the game, they're going to nerf this hide mechanic a little bit. In that if you are threatening a character, you cannot go into hiding when you're threatening that character. They will catch you while you're trying to do it. It's probably a good nerf because right now the hide mechanic is severely overpowered. Being able to be right behind somebody, I just attacked him, I'm right behind him, I'm going into hiding right behind him to get a sneak attack again. Again, probably overpowered. Okay. So that's why they're going to nerf that, and it makes sense that happens. It really, I think, is probably a misplaced mechanic right now in the game. But be aware that you will not be able to do that in the full version of the game once it comes out. So I'm just going to finish Andorn off with a ranged attack, and we're completely done.
Light on my feet.
Okay, so I can go up here and search Andorn. And we have a bandit's key. So here's our short sword. We will actually look at that here in just a second. Okay, so our short sword, yes, and this is what I thought. The difference in the proficiency unlocks between a short sword and a scimitar. The scimitar has flourish. Flourish is also on the short sword. The scimitar has lacerate, whereas the short sword has piercing strike. So different proficiency unlocks for the different types of weapons. So depending upon what extra damage types you want to do, is going to determine how you want these to go. Now, the short sword, if I move it to Astarion,
What now?
he's proficient with it. So now I can replace one of these daggers with a short sword, and he goes from 1d4 damage to 1d6 damage. And he can still dual wield them because they are both light weapons, and since they're both finesse weapons, he's still using his dexterity for his attack rolls. Okay, so that's just kind of an intro to how Dungeons & Dragons proficiencies work, and how the different types of weapons, being light, heavy, finesse, thrown weapons, in the case of the glaive, extra reach weapons, how those all tend to work with each other. Okay. So now we're going to keep exploring around here. We have a plaque over here, and we have some wooden crates.
It feels
Nothing
more like
there.
a tomb than a temple.
We're going to get Lae'zel to do some more searching. If there's books, we definitely want her picking them up. Oh, she's still in hiding. Let's get everybody out of hide so she can actually run. I was like, why is it taking her so long?
Ancient, indecipherable text covers the plaque.
Okay, now to me, this looks like
Whoever worshipped here must be long gone.
a way to explore further or move farther through this. There obviously isn't an early access, but it's something to keep in mind that maybe in the full version, there's a door here of some type or something like that you might be able to explore farther through. They have added what they said is 33% more content into Act 1 and the prologue. So there will be other things for you to do other than what you're seeing in early access here on my playthrough. So be sure to pay attention and watch for them as you go. Okay, so we do have some gold. And we have a plate that's worth 50 gold. So we are definitely going to pick that up. Okay, and now we have, if we hold Alt, you can see that we have a lot of food sitting here on the table. And it's kind of hard to see some of that food, but you could go through and click on things individually and pick them up. Or you can just hold Alt and click on them one at a time, and your character will move around the table to go pick them up. Okay, so there's a supply pack that we want to pick up. And there's another cheese wedge. Okay. And what did I just see?
Consider me intrigued.
Oh, is it seeing the lever through the wall? Okay, yeah. It was seeing this lever here in front of me, even though it was behind me. I was like, why am I seeing a lever over there? That lever's never been there before. So it's just a perspective issue. Another ink pot, and some more gold. Alright. So now back here, you can see that we have one more room to go into. And we get into this room here. This room here, you can see it's lit up by the sun, and that's because this room here, you can see this debris. This is the hole in the floor that was opened up by me dropping the stone slab on it from above where we had the first encounter with Gimblebach. If you jump down through that hole, you end up inside this room, which will take you into here, and as soon as you walk into this room, you're in combat with everybody in this room. Okay? So, 6 of one, half dozen the other, whether you enter in the main way and come in here, you jump down here and come through this door, and then you're managing this combat, or you're coming in this way through this door and managing this combat as well. This room gives you a little bit more room to maneuver, but when you jump down through that hole, you're going to take some fall damage because you don't have access to the Featherfall spell yet. So you're going to take a little fall damage when you jump down here, and if you choose to enter the temple or the chapel this way. Okay? But certainly is another way to get in here. So we're going to again do some more searching in here. Okay, holding Alt. Nothing else shows up.
No one back home will ever believe.
Okay, so holding or looking at our mini-map, you can see that we've explored everything inside of the Overgrown Ruins here.
I have to keep going.
All right. So now we can make our way back out. And this ornate door here is unlocked by, again, one of the keys that we have in our possession. All right. And now we're back up here, and again, here is the hole in the ground. Like I said, you can choose to jump into this hole, and it will take you into the chapel as well, but you are going to take some fall damage when you do it. Okay. Is the loot scripted or is it RNG? Some loot is scripted. For the most part, it's RNG. Your vendors have a mix of scripted and RNG loot. There are items, however, in the game that are scripted. So there are certain items that you are always going to find in certain searching locations. And those are always guaranteed to be there. However, it's normally mostly RNG for your crates, vases, that sort of stuff. There are certain of those you will pick which have a scripted piece of loot in it, and then your vendors are a mix for the most part. So I think just like we did last time, we are probably going to end this on a camp visit. And to do that, we're going to send our camp supplies. We're going to clear out our inventory here and send all these camp supplies off to camp. And then we are going to take a long rest. And while we are here, we are going to level up our characters. Okay, and that's going to end our live stream today. So for here, we'll start with our bard, and we'll do our level up here. For all of your characters, going from level 2 to level 3 is fairly important. You're going to have a few more options that affect your character, as well as for your casters, unlocking level 2 spell slots. Okay, so here you can see that you gain a hit point increase. I've unlocked level 2 spells. And now, however, I have an option to take any skill that I currently have proficiency in and give myself expertise in that skill. So, in other words, now I can have not just a +2 proficiency bonus, but I can have an additional +2 for an expertise bonus. So, just like Astarion has sleight of hand proficiency and expertise, so he gets a +4 bonus when he's lockpicking or disarming, I can do the same thing for any of the skills that I already have proficiency in. Alright? So, for now, I think what I'm going to do, since I'm going to be character focused, I'm going to focus on persuasion, and I also want to focus on perception. Perception is so important, as you've seen, us just walking around passively investigating the environment around us. Giving me the perception, that's why I chose this skill at the start, is because I always wanted to choose this as one of my skills to get an expertise in. I just wanted to try this out and see how big a difference it's going to make with my passive checks as I'm going around the environment and sensing things. Persuasion is simply because of my ability, or I want my bard to be my main character NPC interaction person. And persuasion, deception, and intimidation are the three that are normally used in conversations. I'm going to use persuasion because deception and persuasion are normally side by side with each other. And they both would work the same. I both get a +7 out of them. But I'm going to get the extra +2 bonus on my persuasion checks. Okay. Now becomes one of the most important selections that you're going to get for any character that gets this choice at level 3, and that's your subclass. So, for your bard, you have 2 choices of subclass. This is going to be modified for your characters in full version. They've added subclasses. But for now, it's also, we have 2 options here in early access. So the first is College of Lore, and you can see the subclass features that go along with it. So the additional proficiencies here go with the College of Lore. If I change to the College of Valor, I still have the additional proficiencies here. So that is the same for both. However, you see that the choices are different. Okay? The non-charisma based options are also available to me in College of Lore. They are not in College, or actually I take that back, because Insight is not charisma based, it's wisdom based. But you get a different set of choices here for your skills that you're available to have expertise in. So if you really want sleight of hand, for instance, you're not going to get that choice in College of Valor. Okay, so that's the first thing that it's going to impact. But however, you get cutting words. So cutting words is a class action that's going to let you use your wit to distract a creature and sap its confidence. You can go and read some of the bard guides about this and see what it does. One, it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious because of the amount of voice-acted insults that your bard is able to throw at an enemy. But you can also see the effects that it can possibly have. In College of Valor, I'm going to get medium armor proficiency, shield proficiency, martial weapon proficiency, and I'm going to get combat inspiration as a class action. And you can see that this allows me to now add a 1d6 bonus to my attack damage, not just my attack roll. So that's the difference between Bardic Inspiration and Combat Inspiration, is that Bardic Inspiration does not affect damage. However, Combat Inspiration can either up my armor class or up my damage as well. So, and I don't mean mine, I mean the character who I use Bardic Inspiration on. I can't use it on myself. But Combat Inspiration gives you the bonuses, the normal bonuses with your Bardic Inspiration, but allows you to do more damage or get more armor class protection. Okay, so that's the difference there. So I would gain proficiencies, and I'd also gain martial weapon proficiencies, which means I would vastly increase the amount of weapons that I'm proficient with and able to use. So the College of Lore obviously is more skill-based and that sort of stuff, whereas your College of Valor is more melee-based and that sort of stuff. I'm going to choose College of Valor in this playthrough, simply because it's going to allow me to increase my armor class to the highest medium armor armor class that I have in early access. It's going to be a dramatic increase over my light armor proficiency right now as far as my armor class goes. Being able to use medium armor is just a huge benefit for my bard from a protection standpoint. The martial weapon thing is just a bonus. And also the shields, again, being allowing me to up my armor class even more. Remember, as a bard, when you're casting certain spells, you need to maintain concentration. Concentration is broken if somebody hits you and if you fail a Constitution saving throw. Upping your armor class means that they have a much harder time hitting you, so you don't, if they miss, your concentration's not broken, and then you don't even have to worry about passing a Constitution saving throw or not. So these two things are going to help me keep my concentration on my spells when I'm in combat more. So now for my spells, because now I have access to level 2 spells here. And there are some really good level 2 spells here. You can go, it gives you Phantasmal Force by default. So Phantasmal Force, and again by default, it's giving it to you. That's what comes default selected. You can change that, which we will. But Phantasmal Force is a concentration spell. But it costs, if they don't make the intelligence save, then they are going to get hit with 1d6 psychic damage every turn. However, each time that it takes damage from another source, the damage type changes to that damage type. So in other words, it's going to deal psychic damage. However, it's going to take every turn after that, it's going to take another 1d6 damage of whatever type it was damaged with previously. So what's interesting about Phantasmal Force is that I could cast it on somebody who is vulnerable to fire damage. It would do 1d6 psychic damage the first time, And then if Lae'zel hits it with her flaming sword and causes fire damage, then the next time or next turn, this psychic damage is going to change to fire damage, and if they're vulnerable to it, then they would take 2 times the damage because they're vulnerable to it. So it allows you to customize the damage type based upon the enemy that you're applying it to. It's a fascinating spell that can cause damage over time if you can maintain your concentration. Okay? For me, if you've seen any of my playthroughs before, again, and the others, I'm not going to go through all of these. There are great spells. Shatter is amazing. Silence is not so great in that it's an area of effect. It does a 6-meter radius, and most of the time, everybody is able to just move outside of that silence range. So it's not a great spell, but it is situationally very useful. Blindness as blinding an enemy creature is great. However, I think there's much better crowd control spells than single target blindness. Calm emotions and that sort of stuff is basically allowing the creature not to be charmed or frightened, which can be very useful, especially in something like the Harpy encounter, which we're going to be dealing with in the Druid's Grove. You can cast this in an area, and all of your characters in it are going to be immune to being charmed or frightened. Okay. However, if you've seen my playthroughs, you know that I'm going to go with Cloud of Daggers. It's a great area denial spell, as we were talking about earlier, where somebody mentioned in DOS you would just put, a flaming surface right in front of that door. This is the spell that allows you to do that, basically. It's going to cause 4d4 slashing damage to anybody that moves through it, and you can place it in front of doorways and that sort of stuff so that enemies have to move through it to reach you. It is just a very, very useful, somewhat high damaging area denial spell for crowd control. So that's the way I'm going to go, but you can feel free to choose any of your other spells here. I would not do Lesser Restoration simply because you're going to pick up an amulet that's going to give you that ability in early access. But Heat Metal is great against enemies who are wearing metal armor. And Enhance Ability situationally can be very good, but not something I would use a level 2 spell slot on. Okay. So that's my spell, and now for replacement spells, we can choose if we want to swap out any of these spells for anything else and learn one of these additional spells. So if I wanted to swap out Heroism for Phantasmal Force or Shatter or something like that, I certainly could. And that's probably something that I'm going to do, is swap out Heroism for Shatter as another spell that gets rid of a concentration spell, which I had 3 of them previously, and gets me another direct damage spell. Okay. So now I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to go to Gale.
Have the magic touch.
And Gale, again, hit points. He unlocks level 2 spell slots. There are some really good level 2 spells, again, for Gale. But Gale is not going to be in my party. And that's why I took Cloud of Daggers on my Bard. If Gale's going to be in your party, then having him take Cloud of Daggers is a much better option. But Gale's, like I say, is not going to be in my party. So some of the great spell options for him are Flaming Sphere. Causes damage, it stays on the battlefield. You can move it around like an ally and cause damage in multiple locations. Scorching Ray is amazing, especially against things that are vulnerable to fire. It's very much like Magic Missile in that you can cast multiple rays of Scorching Ray on different targets. However, they get a chance to miss against it, meaning that you have to roll an attack roll to see whether it hits, unlike Magic Missile, which is it's always going to hit. So, and then Misty Step is just amazing for Gale. When you're starting off, being able to move him around multiple locations very quickly is very, very useful. So I'm almost always going to choose Misty Step. And then for my prepared spells, I'm going to take Chromatic Orb, and I'm going to get rid of it, and I'm going to replace it with Scorching Ray, and I'm going to remove Grease and replace it with Misty Step. So you can see I have Witch Bolt as my concentration and Fog Cloud, but the rest of them are instantaneous damage dealing here. For Lae'zel, again, a choice of subclass. So, subclass feature for Battlemaster gets you superiority dice. Eldritch Knight gets you access to more spells. That is really the difference between those two. Whether or not you want to focus on pure combat, or whether you want to have the ability to bring up spells that are going to help you in combat. I'm almost always going to go with Battlemaster for Lae'zel. Eldritch Knight, it's not that there's any benefit, or, you know, it's not a great subclass. It's just for Lae'zel, she's my single point, single target damage dealing NPC in my party. And as that, I want her to be able to deal the most damage she possibly can. And that happens because of her superiority dice. So every short rest, she has 4 superiority die available to her, and she can use those superiority die for special attacks. And you can pick up to 3 different maneuvers, which are specialty attacks here. So first is a disarming attack, which does just what it says. There's a possibility if you make the attack land that they're going to drop their weapon that they're holding. Okay? A menacing attack is if you hit it and it lands, there's a possibility that it's going to frighten the target. And frightening a target means that they can't move and they have disadvantage on all of their ability checks and attack rolls. So, an extraordinarily powerful attack to have. And then pushing attack is you have the chance to push a target back 4.5 meters. Now, this is very useful simply because of the verticality in this game. Instead of using your shove attack or your shove action to try and push somebody off, you can use a pushing attack, which is going to cause damage from the sword strike as well as pushing them back. So it's like shoving them and dealing damage in the same action, as well as them taking fall damage from when they land on the ground. So pushing attack is incredibly useful. Rally is a way to give one of your allies additional hit points. It's okay. Riposte is a reaction that can be toggled on and off during your turn. So whenever somebody attacks you and misses, you get a chance to attack them back as a reaction, so to speak. Which can be very, very useful. It uses a superiority die to do it. You only have 4 superiority die available to you, so if you're surrounded by a bunch of low hit point characters and they all just keep missing you, you are probably going to run out of, superiority die fairly quickly if you continue to use it for your riposte. Still very, very useful, like I say, to help clean out those group of enemies that might be around you. However, I think disarming attack is much more useful. The other one is the trip attack, which again knocks it prone. When a target is prone, it needs to spend half of its movement to get back up. And while it's prone, every attack has advantage against the character that's laying on the ground. And that attack is going to do extra damage. So, trip attack can be very, very useful. It gets a dexterity save to not fall down, but it can be very useful. I just prefer to go with disarming instead of it. And that is what gives you these actions. You have the melee versions of all of those 3 maneuvers, and you also have ranged versions of those exact same things. So I can use my short bow to possibly shoot the weapon out of the hands of an enemy that is far away from me. That can be very, very useful if you are trying to protect other squishier characters around the battlefield. And that's why I use disarming attack, or why I take it most of the time, is simply because I can use it to possibly disarm somebody who's attacking one of my other characters. Now, just because of your Githyanki from level 2 to level 3, you get the jump ability or the psionic jump ability. If you touch a creature, you triple their jumping distance for 10 turns. So that can be situationally useful, just not very often. And last is Astarion. Again, hit points, and he gets a subclass choice. And again, this is very similar to what you get for the fighter class. You get a spell casting thief, or you get a pure thief. Okay, again, very similar to Lae'zel here, in that I want Astarion in my party to do very specific things. And those specific things, you've noticed also with his sneak attacks, can cause a heck of a lot of single point damage as well. I could use some cantrips to help control the battlefield more. However, the thief class gets access to fast hands and second story work. Second story work just means that if I take falling damage, I'm only going to take half of the damage that's rolled. Okay? So second story work is useful, but it doesn't break or make the class. Fast hands, however, gains you an additional bonus action, and this is huge. What it means you can do is you can use one of your bonus actions to dash as a cunning action that the rogue class gets, move all the way across the battlefield, move like 20 meters away, move behind somebody, use your second bonus action to go into hiding, and then use your main action with a sneak attack. That second bonus action for rogues is incredibly powerful. It's something that I would never pass up when it comes to keeping Astarion in your party. It's simply that has that big an impact on the battlefield that I would not ever use anything other than Thief. You're obviously free to play however you want. For me, Thief is just a much, much better option for how to go with the rogue class. Alright, so the last thing that we need to do is talk to Astarion real quick. Have him stay in the camp.
I guess I'll spend my evenings lounging here while you do all the hard work. It sounds awful.
And we're going to go over and talk to Shadowheart and bring her into the party temporarily.
Almost pleasant traveling with company, if you ignore all the less pleasant aspects.
Okay, and we're going to deal with some of her... Actually, we've already gone through all of those options.
All right, some company wouldn't hurt on the road, especially if there's trouble.
So we're going to bring her into our party just so we can level her up.
Wits and blades, always sharp.
Okay, so Cleric, again, hit points, but unlock level 2 spell slots. With Clerics, unlike your Wizard class and your Sorcerer class, you get access to all of the level 2 spells. You don't have to choose which spells you want to pick. You simply get access to all of them. Okay, now what you have is you can change your prepared spells. Okay, so here I'm going to remove Command, and I'm probably... This is actually a good choice here. I think I'm going to go with Hold Person in its place. Prayer of Healing can only be used outside of combat. It's kind of a way to use a spell slot to get back some hit points instead of taking a short rest or something like that. But because resting is so easy in this game, I would never utilize it. For Aid basically gives everybody 5 hit points that act as temporary hit points until those hit points either get used up or until the next long rest. So there's not any more direct healing here involved, but again, Shadowheart's not going to be in my party, for the most part, so I don't think it's important what I really prepare for her. Now she's already in the trickery domain for her subclass, so you don't get to pick that with Shadowheart. It's predetermined. So she gets Mirror Image and Pass Without Trace. Pass Without Trace is actually really cool. It's basically a +10 bonus to all stealth checks for your entire party once she casts it. So you can make your way through enemy-infested areas using Pass Without Trace to get to more advantageous positions or areas. It's just, situationally, it can be very beneficial. Mirror Image is a personal defense spell in that you cast it, it creates duplicates of yourself, and that increases your armor class by 3. And then as you evade an attack, one of those mirror images disappears. So then you would have 2 mirror images left. So each duplicate increases your armor class by 3, so when you start off, it's a huge bonus. The first attack drops it, and then you have a +6. And then the last one is by 3, so you can get some huge benefits out of Mirror Image to protect yourself from incoming damage. And she gets to do this as a level 2 spell whenever she wants. It's always prepared. That just comes with her class. Okay. So again, we're going to talk with her because at this point, we're not going to have her in the party.
Almost pleasant traveling with company. If you're sure. Fine. I'll be here whenever you rediscover your taste in company.
And I'm going to bring Astarion back into the party.
Need something? Darling, I thought you'd never ask. Lead on.
Okay, so now we've got our party back to, for now, what it's going to be for a little bit until we encounter the Druid's Grove. And that's what's going to happen in our next live stream. We've leveled everybody up. We've gotten some bonuses because of our level up to our abilities and that sort of stuff, especially with our Bardic Inspiration, having Combat Inspiration, and then our spell choices that we're able to have now with Cloud of Daggers for area denial. And our other companion characters have leveled up as well. So we've all gained some big bonuses here, which you're going to see put to use in our next live stream. So I think that's where we're going to cut things off today at our normal time. So again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. Without your support, none of this would be possible. This is Commander Jorval saying, until next time, fare thee well.